You are walking down a street. The buildings are familiar but wrong, the proportions are off, the colors are too saturated, the sky is a shade of orange that does not exist in nature. There are people around you, faces you recognize but cannot place, voices speaking words that dissolve before you can pass them. You are in a city you have never visited, wearing clothes you have never owned, heading toward a destination you cannot name. And none of this bothers you. None of this triggers suspicion, because this is perfectly normal. This is how things work here. This is reality. And then something happens. A small thing. A crack in the surface. Maybe you notice that your hands have 6 fingers. Maybe you notice that you can read the sign on the building, but when you look away and look back, the words have changed. Maybe you notice that you are breathing, but there is no air, just the sensation of breathing without the mechanics of it. And in that moment, that fraction of a second when the inconsistency registers, something shifts. A recognition, a jolt, a whisper that rises from somewhere deep in your awareness and says, "This is not real. This is a dream. I am dreaming. You are lucid." And everything changes. You look at your hands, really look at them, with the deliberate attention that you never bring to your hands in ordinary life, and they are astonishingly detailed. You can see the ridges of your fingerprints, the creases in your knuckles, the tiny hairs on the backs of your fingers. The detail is not dreamy. It is hyperreal, more detailed than waking perception, as though the brain's rendering engine, now aware that a conscious observer is paying attention, has increased its resolution to maximum. You look at the sky and the orange deepens, becomes a shade so vivid, so saturated, so impossibly beautiful that no sky in your waking life has ever matched it. You touch the wall of a building and feel the texture, rough stone, cool to the touch, granular under your fingertips. The sensation is not vague, it is specific, detailed, and indistinguishable from the sensation of touching real stone in waking life. Experienced lucid dreamers report that the lucid dream state is often perceived as more real than waking life, not less. The colors are more vivid, the sounds are more clear, the emotional intensity is greater. The sense of presence, of being here, now, in this moment, in this place, is heightened rather than diminished. This is counterintuitive. If the dream is just a brain construction, if it is merely a hallucination produced by neurons firing without external input, then why does it feel more real than the state that is produced with external input? Why does the constructed reality sometimes surpass the real reality in vividness, clarity, and emotional power? The question itself undermines the assumption that dreams are degraded copies of waking experience, pale imitations, fuzzy reproductions, low-resolution versions of the real thing. Lucid dreamers consistently report the opposite. The dream, once lucidity is achieved, is often experienced as an upgrade, as though waking consciousness was the low-resolution version all along, and lucidity unlocks a perceptual capacity that the waking brain normally constrains. This is consistent with the filter theory we explored in the OBE investigation, the proposal that the brain constrains rather than produces consciousness, and that altered states represent a loosening of the constraint rather than a degradation of the function. And here is what no one tells you about that moment. The dream does not end. You do not wake up. You remain inside the dream, but now you know you are dreaming. The street is still there, the buildings are still there, the orange sky is still there, but you are different. You are aware. You are conscious inside a world that your own brain is generating, and the world responds to your awareness. The colors become more vivid, the textures become more detailed. The dream becomes more real than it was before you knew it was a dream, as though your awareness is the signal that tells the dream-generating machinery to increase the resolution, to deepen the rendering, to produce a more convincing simulation now that there is a conscious observer paying attention. This is a lucid dream. And if you have never had one, the description may sound like fantasy, like something that belongs in science fiction rather than in neuroscience. But lucid dreaming is not fantasy. It is a documented, measured, replicated, peer-reviewed phenomenon. It is one of the most extraordinary states of consciousness that the human brain can produce, and it raises questions about the nature of reality, the architecture of consciousness, and the relationship between the observer and the observed that connect directly to everything we have explored across these investigations. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition has been practicing lucid dreaming for over 1,000 years, and they do not call it lucid dreaming. They call it milam, dream yoga, and it is one of the 6 yogas of Naropa, 6 advanced practices that constitute the core curriculum of Tibetan Buddhist contemplative training. Dream yoga is not a hobby. It is not a party trick. It is a spiritual technology with a specific purpose: to demonstrate through direct experience that the waking world is as much a construction of consciousness as the dream world, and that the practitioner who can wake up inside a dream can, eventually, wake up inside waking life. The Tibetan tradition treats ordinary waking consciousness as a kind of sleep, a state of unknowing, of automatic reactivity, of unexamined assumption and lucid dreaming as the first step toward the ultimate awakening. The recognition that all experience, waking and dreaming, is a projection of consciousness, empty of independent existence, and available for transformation through the power of aware intention. This is not merely an Eastern concept. Aristotle, in his treatise De Somnis, written in the 4th century BCE, provided the first written description of lucid dreaming in the Western tradition. Often, when one is asleep, there is something in consciousness which declares that what then presents itself is but a dream. The description is precise: something in consciousness which declares a meta-awareness, a witness within the dream, a part of the mind that remains awake while the rest sleeps. Aristotle did not develop the observation. He noted it and moved on, but the observation itself is remarkable evidence that lucid dreaming was recognized, experienced, and recorded in the Western philosophical tradition 24 centuries ago. The ancient Greeks did more than observe lucid dreams. They built temples to cultivate them. The Asclepiae healing temples dedicated to Asclepios, the god of medicine, were centers of dream incubation, where patients would sleep in sacred dormitories and seek healing dreams. The practice was not passive. The patients prepared through fasting, ritual purification, and prayer, creating the conditions that they believed would invite a healing dream from the god. And the dreams that came, the dreams that the patients reported upon waking, were treated as diagnostic and therapeutic events, as real interventions by a divine intelligence communicating through the medium of the dream. The healing was the dream, the medicine was the vision, the temple was the laboratory. And the practice survived for nearly 1,000 years, from the 5th century BCE to the 5th century CE, suggesting that the outcomes were real enough and consistent enough to sustain institutional support across an entire civilization. The Asclepiae were not fringe establishments. They were among the most respected medical institutions in the ancient world, the Mayo Clinics of antiquity, and their primary therapeutic modality was the cultivation of conscious, intentional, transformative dream experience, and the practice preparing the mind, setting the intention, entering sleep with deliberate awareness, is structurally identical to the techniques that modern lucid dreaming researchers prescribe. The Islamic tradition places dream experience at the foundation of prophetic knowledge. The Prophet Muhammad said, "The true dream is 1/46th part of prophecy." The fraction is specific, not a vague assertion that dreams matter, but a precise quantitative claim about the relationship between dream experience and prophetic insight. And the Islamic tradition developed a sophisticated science of dream interpretation, ilm al-ruya, that distinguished between three types of dreams: dreams from God, ruya sadika, true dreams that convey genuine information; dreams from the self, reflecting the dreamer's desires, fears, and preoccupations; and dreams from shaitan, deceptive dreams designed to mislead. The ability to distinguish between these three types, to know which dreams carry genuine information and which are noise, requires exactly the kind of discerning awareness that lucid dreaming cultivates. Ibn Sirin, the great 8th century Muslim dream interpreter, developed a systematic methodology for dream interpretation that presupposes a cultivated awareness within the dream state, an ability to observe the dream's content with the same critical intelligence that the waking mind applies to waking experience. Ibn Arabi, the 13th century Sufi philosopher, whose metaphysical system we have encountered in multiple investigations, took the dream further than any other Islamic thinker. Ibn Arabi described a dimension of reality that he called the alam al-mithal, the world of images, or the imaginal world, a realm that is neither purely physical nor purely spiritual, but intermediate. Between the two, the alam al-mithal is the barzakh, the isthmus, the boundary zone between the material and the spiritual, the domain in which spiritual realities take imaginal form and material realities reveal their spiritual meaning. And the primary portal to the alam al-mithal is the dream. The dream is not a hallucination. It is not a random firing of neurons. It is an encounter with the imaginal world, a real dimension of reality that consciousness accesses when the sensory gates of waking perception are closed and the subtler gates of imaginal perception are opened. The Hindu tradition maps lucid dreaming onto its comprehensive architecture of consciousness with a precision that anticipates the neuroscience by 2 millennia. The Mandukya Upanishad, one of the shortest and most profound of the Upanishads, describes 4 states of consciousness. Vaishvanara, the waking state in which consciousness is directed outward through the physical senses, perceiving the external world of gross objects. Taijasa, the dreaming state in which consciousness is directed inward through the subtle senses, perceiving the internal world of images, memories, and creations that the mind generates without external input. Prajna, the state of deep dreamless sleep in which consciousness rests in undifferentiated awareness, without objects, without images, without content. And Turiya, the 4th state, which is not a state at all but the awareness that pervades all 3 states, the consciousness that is present in waking and dreaming and deep sleep, but that is not identical to any of them. Lucid dreaming, in the Hindu framework, is the moment when Turiya begins to manifest in Taijasa, when the 4th state, the witness consciousness, becomes active within the dream. The dreamer who becomes lucid is not merely waking up inside a dream. They are experiencing Turiya, the ground awareness, the witness, the consciousness that observes all states without being limited to any of them. And the experience is significant, not because it is entertaining, though it is, but because it reveals the existence of Turiya, the existence of a consciousness that is deeper than waking, deeper than dreaming, deeper than sleep, and that persists through all 3 states as their common ground. If you can be aware inside a dream, then awareness is not a product of waking. It is not generated by the waking brain's sensory processing. It is something more fundamental, something that exists independently of sensory input, independently of the waking state, independently of the physical body's engagement with the external world. The Christian tradition's engagement with lucid dreaming is less systematic than the Eastern traditions, but no less profound. The Bible contains over 100 references to dreams and visions, from Jacob's ladder at Bethel, where the patriarch sees angels ascending and descending in a dream, and awakes declaring, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it," to the dreams of Joseph in the book of Genesis, whose ability to interpret Pharaoh's dreams saved Egypt from famine and elevated him to the second most powerful position in the kingdom. The prophet Daniel interpreted the dreams of King Nebuchadnezzar, dreams that carried information about future events that the waking mind could not access. And Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus, received divine instructions through dreams on 3 separate occasions to take Mary as his wife, to flee to Egypt, and to return to Israel. The dreams were not dismissed as neural noise. They were treated as a legitimate channel of divine communication, a medium through which information from a higher dimension of reality could reach the human mind when the waking senses were quieted and the gates of ordinary perception were closed. Synesius of Cyrene, a 5th century Christian bishop and philosopher, wrote De Insomniis, on dreams, one of the most remarkable treatises on dream consciousness in the Western tradition. Synesius argued that dreams provide access to a dimension of reality that waking consciousness cannot reach, and that the cultivation of dream awareness, the development of the capacity to observe and direct the dream from within, is a legitimate spiritual practice. He described the dream as a personal oracle, a source of knowledge that is available to everyone, regardless of social status or education, and that requires only the development of attention and the cultivation of awareness. Synesius was describing lucid dreaming in the 5th century, in a Christian context, as a spiritual technology for accessing divine knowledge. The Aboriginal Australian tradition places the dream at the very foundation of reality itself. The Dreamtime Jukurpa in the Warlpiri language is not a time in the past. It is a dimension of reality that exists simultaneously with the waking world, underlying it, generating it, sustaining it. The physical landscape of Australia is, in Aboriginal cosmology, a product of the Dreamtime, created by ancestral beings who travelled across the formless earth, singing it into existence, dreaming it into form. The song lines, the paths that the ancestral beings travelled, are simultaneously physical routes across the landscape and musical informational codes that encode the creative acts that produce the landscape. To walk a songline is to retrace the creative act. To sing a songline is to reperform the creation. And to dream is to access the dreamtime directly, to enter the dimension from which the physical world is continuously projected, to participate in the ongoing creative act that sustains the world in existence. In Aboriginal cosmology, the dream is not less real than waking. It is more real. It is the source, the ground, the creative matrix from which the waking world emerges as a secondary manifestation. This is the insight that the traditions discovered through centuries of practice, and that the neuroscience is now beginning to confirm. Because when Stephen LaBerge, a psychophysiologist at Stanford University, brought lucid dreaming into the laboratory in the 1980s, he did not merely confirm that lucid dreaming is real. He confirmed that it represents a fundamentally distinct state of consciousness, different from waking, different from normal dreaming, different from any other state that neuroscience had previously identified. A hybrid state, a paradox, a condition in which the brain is simultaneously asleep and awake, generating the vivid, immersive, hallucinatory reality of the dream, while maintaining the reflective, self-aware, metacognitive awareness of waking consciousness. LaBerge's breakthrough was methodological. The challenge of studying lucid dreaming scientifically was that the experience occurs inside the dreamer's head, inaccessible to external observation, unverifiable by any instrument that measures the outside of the skull. How do you prove that someone is lucid inside a dream? LaBerge solved the problem with an elegant protocol. He trained lucid dreamers to make prearranged eye movement signals a specific pattern of left-right eye movements as soon as they became lucid in a dream. Eye movements during REM sleep correspond to the direction the dreamer is looking. In the dream, the eyes move in sync with the dream's visual content. So a deliberate pattern of eye movements executed by a lucid dreamer inside the dream would be visible on the polysomnographic recording as a specific, prearranged signal, a message sent from inside the dream to the outside world, a communication across the boundary of consciousness. LaBerge also developed 2 systematic techniques for inducing lucid dreams, techniques that have been validated in subsequent research and that are now used by lucid dreaming researchers worldwide. Mild mnemonic induction of lucid dreams involves waking briefly after a period of REM sleep, rehearsing the intention to recognize the dream state, visualizing becoming lucid in a recent dream, and then returning to sleep with the intention firmly planted. The technique exploits prospective memory, the brain's capacity to remember to do something in the future, by programming the sleeping mind to remember to recognize the dream. Wild wake-initiated lucid dreams involves maintaining conscious awareness during the transition from waking to sleep, observing the hypnagogic imagery that appears as the brain shifts from waking to REM, and entering the dream state without losing awareness. Wild is more difficult but more direct. It produces a seamless transition from waking awareness to dream awareness, with no gap of unconsciousness between the 2 states. Both techniques have structural parallels to the practices that the traditions prescribe. The Tibetan dream yoga practice begins with a daytime exercise repeatedly asking, "Am I dreaming?" Throughout the day, testing the reality of waking experience, cultivating the habit of reality testing that will eventually carry over into the dream. This is mild, the planting of a mnemonic intention that the sleeping mind will execute. The Hindu practice of yoga nidra, yogic sleep, involves maintaining conscious awareness during the descent into sleep, observing the transition from waking to dreaming to deep sleep without losing the thread of awareness. This is wild, the deliberate maintenance of consciousness across the state boundary between waking and sleep. The traditions developed these techniques centuries before LaBerge named them. The names are different. The mechanisms are the same. The experiment worked. It should be noted that Keith Hearn, a British parapsychologist at the University of Hull, independently made the same discovery in 1978, 3 years before LaBerge's publication, using the same eye signal methodology with a lucid dreamer named Alan Worsley. Hearn's work was not widely published and did not receive the recognition it deserved. But the independent discovery by 2 researchers on different continents using the same methodology underscores the robustness of the finding. In 1981, LaBerge published the results. Lucid dreamers reliably produced the prearranged eye movement signals during verified REM sleep. The signals appeared on the polysomnographic recording at the exact moments when the dreamers reported becoming lucid. The dreamers were asleep. Their EEG showed the characteristic patterns of REM sleep. Their muscles were atonic, paralyzed, as they are during normal REM. Their brainwave patterns were consistent with dreaming rather than waking, and yet they were conscious aware that they were dreaming, capable of deliberate action within the dream, capable of executing a prearranged plan, capable of communicating with the waking world through the only motor channel that remains active during REM sleep: the eyes. The neuroscience that followed LaBerge's breakthrough has revealed what makes the lucid dreaming brain different from both the waking brain and the normal dreaming brain. And the difference illuminates the nature of consciousness itself. Ursula Voss, a neuroscientist at Goethe University Frankfurt, published a landmark study in 2009 showing that lucid dreaming is characterized by a specific electrophysiological signature: increased gamma band activity, approximately 40 Hz in the frontal and frontolateral regions of the cortex. This gamma activity is not present during normal REM sleep. It is present during waking consciousness, where it is associated with higher cognitive functions, self-awareness, metacognition, and the integration of information across brain regions. The lucid dream brain shows a hybrid pattern. The posterior regions show the characteristic activity of REM sleep, generating the dream, while the frontal regions show the characteristic activity of waking consciousness, maintaining awareness. The back of the brain is asleep. The front of the brain is awake. The dream is generated by the sleeping regions. The awareness is maintained by the waking regions. And the two coexist simultaneously in the same brain, producing an experience that is neither waking nor dreaming, but a third state that combines features of both. In 2014, Voss demonstrated something even more remarkable. She applied transcranial alternating current stimulation, TACS, at various frequencies to the frontal cortex of sleeping participants during REM sleep. When she applied stimulation at 25 to 40 Hz, the gamma frequency range participants became lucid in their dreams. The stimulation induced lucidity, not through drugs, not through years of meditation practice, through the direct application of a specific frequency to the frontal cortex. The frequency determines the state. Apply the gamma frequency to the sleeping brain, and the sleeping brain wakes up, not fully, not into ordinary waking consciousness, but into the hybrid state of lucid awareness within the ongoing dream. Consciousness can be switched on inside a dream by applying the right frequency to the right brain region. This connects directly to everything we discovered in the music investigation about entrainment. The shamanic drum at 4.5 beats per second drives the brain into theta, the frequency associated with deep meditation and visionary states. Gregorian chant drives the brain toward alpha, the frequency of relaxed alertness. And Voss's TACS drives the brain toward gamma, within the dream the frequency of lucid self-awareness. The frequency determines the state, the vibration determines the consciousness, and the traditions which developed specific techniques for inducing lucid dreams through rhythmic practice, mantra repetition, and meditative concentration were exploiting the same frequency-consciousness relationship that Voss demonstrated with electrical stimulation. Martin Dresler, a neuroscientist at the Max Planck Institute for Psychiatry in Munich, confirmed Voss's findings using fMRI. Dresler scanned lucid dreamers during verified REM sleep and found that lucid dreaming activates the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the brain region most associated with executive function, working memory, and self-reflective awareness. The DLPFC is highly active during waking consciousness. It is almost completely silent during normal REM sleep, which is why normal dreams are uncritical, unreflective, and accepted without question, no matter how bizarre their content. When the DLPFC reactivates during REM sleep, when it comes back online within the dreaming brain, the dreamer gains the capacity for critical reflection. The dreamer can ask, "Is this real?" The dreamer can conclude, "This is a dream." The dreamer can act, "I will fly, I will seek, I will explore." The reactivation of a single brain region transforms the dream from a passive, hallucinatory experience into an active, intentional, exploratory one. Alan Hobson, the Harvard psychiatrist, whose activation synthesis hypothesis of dreaming has dominated sleep science for decades, recognized lucid dreaming as a challenge to his original framework and revised his model accordingly. Hobson developed the AIM model, a three-dimensional state space defined by activation, how much the brain is activated, input source, whether sensory input comes from external or internal sources, and modulation, the balance between aminergic and cholinergic neurotransmitters. Normal waking occupies one region of this space. Normal REM dreaming occupies another. And lucid dreaming occupies a third, a region that Hobson acknowledged as a genuinely distinct state of consciousness, characterized by high activation, internal input source, and a unique modulatory balance that permits self-awareness within the dream. Hobson called it a dissociated state, a condition in which the brain's normal coupling between activation level and awareness level is broken. In ordinary waking, high activation and high awareness go together. In ordinary REM sleep, high activation and low awareness go together. The brain is highly active, but the person is unconscious. In lucid dreaming, high activation and high awareness coexist within a state that is nominally sleep-breaking the coupling, producing a paradox, revealing that awareness and activation are not as tightly linked as the neuroscience had assumed. The paradox is significant because it bears directly on the question of what consciousness requires. If consciousness requires sensory input from the external world, if awareness is produced by the brain's processing of sensory data, then consciousness should be impossible during REM sleep. When sensory input is blocked, and the brain is generating its own data internally, the existence of lucid dreaming demonstrates that consciousness does not require sensory input. It requires something else, something that the frontal cortex provides when the DLPFC reactivates, something that the gamma frequency carries when Voss applies tax, something that the traditions call awareness, and that neuroscience is still struggling to define. Consciousness is not the product of sensory processing. It is the product of something deeper, something that can be present in waking, present in dreaming, and present in the hybrid state that lucid dreaming represents. But the most practically significant finding comes from Daniel Erlacher, a sports scientist at the University of Bern, who demonstrated that lucid dreaming produces real, measurable improvements in waking performance. Erlacher trained athletes to practice specific motor skills during lucid dreams, gymnastic routines, martial arts sequences, complex movement patterns, and measured their waking performance before and after the dream practice. The lucid dream practice produced measurable improvement, not as much as physical practice, but significantly more than no practice. The improvement was not placebo. It was measurable on objective performance metrics, jump distance, reaction time, movement accuracy, sequence completion, and it was specific. The improvement occurred in the specific skills that were practiced in the dream, not in general motor performance. A gymnast who practiced a floor routine in a lucid dream improved on that specific routine. An athlete who practiced a specific martial arts combination improved on that specific combination. The brain treats the lucid dream rehearsal as genuine experience. The motor cortex activates. The neural pathways fire. The skill-related circuits are strengthened because the brain cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined movement and a physically executed one when the vividness reaches the level that lucid dreaming provides. This finding is extraordinary, and it reveals something profound about the nature of reality as the brain constructs it. The brain does not know the difference between a lucid dream and waking experience. The neural circuits respond the same way, the learning is the same, the plasticity is the same, and if the brain cannot tell the difference, if the brain's own neural machinery treats the lucid dream and the waking experience as equivalent, then what exactly is the difference? The answer, as we explored in the information investigation, is the source of the data. In waking, the data comes from external sensory input. In dreaming, the data comes from internal generation. But the processing is the same. The construction is the same. The reality as far as the brain is concerned is the same, and this is precisely what the traditions have been saying. The Tibetan Buddhists say, waking life is a dream from which you have not yet awakened. The Hindus say, the material world is Maya, a projection of consciousness, no more and no less real than the projection you experience every night in your dreams. The question is not whether lucid dreaming is real. The question that the traditions have been asking for millennia and that the neuroscience is now forcing upon us is whether waking life is as dreamlike as the lucid dream is lifelike. The next part of this investigation will take this question into the quantum domain, where the physics of observation, information, and consciousness suggests that the boundary between dreaming and waking may be far thinner than the waking mind is comfortable admitting. And the traditions standing at that boundary, as they have stood for millennia, have already mapped what lies on the other side, because the traditions understood something that the neuroscience is only now beginning to articulate. Lucid dreaming is not interesting because it is a cool trick you can do while sleeping. It is interesting because it reveals the mechanism of reality itself. Every night, your brain constructs an entire world complete with physics, with characters, with emotional narrative, with spatial depth and temporal flow from nothing but internal information. No atoms, no photons, no sound waves, no electromagnetic fields, just information, organized by consciousness, experienced as indistinguishable from the waking world that you call real. And the lucid dream is the moment when you catch the brain in the act of construction, when you see the mechanism, when you realize that the reality you are experiencing is being generated by the same consciousness that is experiencing it. The dreamer and the dream are the same thing. The observer and the observed are the same thing. And the question that the traditions have been asking for millennia, are the dreamer and the dream the same thing in waking life too, is the question that the quantum physics of observation, information, and consciousness has been circling since the double-slit experiment was first performed. Every night, your brain performs the most extraordinary feat of engineering in the known universe. It constructs an entire world from scratch, without any external input, without any raw materials, without any blueprint, any architect, any construction crew. Your brain, 3 pounds of tissue sealed in total darkness inside a bone vault, receiving no light, no sound, no touch, no smell, no taste, generates a fully realized, 3-dimensional, emotionally saturated, narratively coherent reality that you inhabit as completely and as convincingly as you inhabit the waking world. You walk through streets that do not exist. You speak with people who are not there. You feel textures that have no surfaces. You taste food that has no molecules. You experience fear, joy, grief, love, desire, and awe, all produced by the same neural machinery that produces these emotions in waking life, all indistinguishable from their waking counterparts in subjective intensity, all directed at objects and situations that exist nowhere in the physical universe, except inside the 3-pound organ that is generating them. The construction is comprehensive. The dream brain generates visual scenes with full color, depth, and perspective. It generates sounds, music, voices, ambient noise, with spatial positioning and emotional resonance. It generates touch, the feeling of grass under bare feet, the weight of an object in the hand, the warmth of sunlight on skin. It generates taste and smell less commonly than vision and sound. But when they appear, they are vivid and specific. It generates emotion, not vague mood states, but specific, intense, context-appropriate emotions that are produced by the same neural circuits that produce emotions in waking life. The amygdala activates during dream fear. The nucleus accumbens activates during dream pleasure. The anterior cingulate activates during dream conflict. The emotional brain does not distinguish between waking emotions and dream emotions. As far as the limbic system is concerned, the threat in the dream is a real threat. The joy in the dream is real joy. The grief in the dream is real grief. And you believe it. Every night, you believe it completely. You do not question the reality of the dream while you are dreaming. You do not notice the inconsistencies, the shifting locations, the morphing faces, the impossible physics, the narrative discontinuities that would be immediately obvious if you encountered them in waking life. You accept everything. You accept that you can fly. You accept that your dead grandmother is alive. You accept that the ocean is in your kitchen. You accept it because the brain that is generating the dream is the same brain that is evaluating the dream, and the brain does not flag its own constructions as constructions. The simulation is seamless. The immersion is total. The illusion is perfect until the moment of lucidity, when something in the frontal cortex wakes up and the dreamer recognizes, with a shock of clarity, that the entire world they are inhabiting is a production of their own consciousness. This is not merely a curiosity about sleep. This is a revelation about the nature of reality itself, because the brain does the same thing in waking life. The waking world you experience the colors, the sounds, the textures, the spatial depth, the temporal flow. The sense of solidity and permanence is constructed by the brain from sensory data, just as the dream world is constructed by the brain from internal data. The construction process is the same. The neural machinery is the same. The experience is the same. The only difference is the source of the data. In waking, the data comes from the sense organs, photons hitting the retina, pressure waves hitting the cochlea, molecules hitting the olfactory receptors. In dreaming, the data comes from internal sources, memory, emotion, the spontaneous activity of neural networks, generating patterns without external triggers. But in both cases, what you experience is not the data. What you experience is the model, the brain's construction, the brain's interpretation, the brain's best guess about what kind of reality would produce this particular pattern of neural activity. The philosopher Thomas Metzinger, one of the most influential thinkers on consciousness in the contemporary philosophical landscape, has described this with brutal clarity. Metzinger argues that consciousness is a transparent model, a model that is so seamless, so immersive, so completely convincing, that the user of the model cannot see the model. The model is transparent, you look through it without seeing it, the way you look through a perfectly clean window without seeing the glass. The waking world is a transparent model. The dream world is a transparent model, and the difference between lucidity and non-lucidity in both dreaming and waking is the difference between seeing through the model and seeing the model. The lucid dreamer sees the model. The lucid dreamer recognizes that the world they are experiencing is a construction, a projection, a transparent simulation generated by the brain's reality modeling machinery. And the question that the traditions have been asking for millennia is, can you achieve the same lucidity in waking life? Can you see through the transparent model of waking reality? Can you recognize that the world you are experiencing right now, the screen you are looking at, the chair you are sitting in, the room you are occupying is also a model, also a construction, also a transparent simulation that your brain is generating from sensory data? Metzinger calls the waking state a dream constrained by sensory input. The phrasing is precise and devastating. Waking life is a dream. It is a dream that happens to be constrained, shaped, calibrated, anchored by data arriving from the external world through the senses. But the dream machinery is running in both states. The model building engine is operating in both states. The transparent simulation is being generated in both states. The difference is not a difference of kind, one real, one illusory. It is a difference of constraint, one constrained by external data, one unconstrained. And the one that is constrained is not therefore more real. It is merely more consistent because the external data provides a stable source of information that keeps the model from drifting. Remove the external data, as sleep does every night, and the model continues, unconstrained, generating a reality that is every bit as experientially real as the constrained version. The brain does not know the difference. The experience does not know the difference. Only the source knows the difference, and the source is not part of the experience. This insight connects directly to the information investigation we just completed. If reality is made of information rather than matter, if the three-dimensional world is a holographic projection from an informational surface, then the distinction between real and dream collapses. Even further, both are informational constructions. Both are generated by the brain's model-building machinery from informational inputs. The waking world is an information-constrained construction. The dream world is an information-unconstrained construction. But both are constructions. Both are models. Both are transparent simulations. And the question of which one is real depends entirely on what you mean by real, and whether you are willing to accept that real might mean something different from what you have always assumed. The quantum physics of observation connects lucid dreaming to the foundations of physical reality through a parallel that is not merely analogical, but potentially mechanistic. In quantum mechanics, the act of observation changes the system being observed. Before observation, a quantum system exists in a superposition, a combination of all possible states, none of them definite, all of them potential. After observation, the superposition collapses, one state becomes actual, the others disappear, and the system acquires definite properties that it did not possess before the observation occurred. The observation creates the reality. The observer participates in the production of the observed. In a normal dream, there is no observer, or more precisely, there is no meta-observer, no witness that watches the dream from outside the dream's own logic. The dreamer is immersed in the dream, the way a character is immersed in a story, experiencing the events, reacting to the events, but never stepping back to evaluate whether the events are real. There is no observation of the dream. There is only participation in the dream. And the dream, in this state, is like an unobserved quantum system, a superposition of possibilities, fluid, shifting, uncollapsed, free to morph from one state to another without constraint, without logic, without the fixity that observation imposes. When lucidity occurs, when the frontal cortex activates, when the DLPFC comes online, when the gamma frequency fires and the dreamer recognizes this is a dream. An observer appears within the dream, a meta-awareness emerges, a witness that watches the dream from a perspective that is not identical to the dream's own perspective. And the dream changes. Lucid dreamers consistently report that the dream becomes more stable, more detailed, more vivid, more coherent when lucidity is achieved. The fluid, shifting, superposition-like quality of the normal dream gives way to a more fixed, more definite, more collapsed quality. The observer's presence stabilizes the dream just as the observer's presence stabilizes the quantum state. The parallel extends even to the phenomenology. Quantum physicists describe the unobserved quantum state as indefinite, potential, a cloud of probability. Lucid dreamers describe the pre-lucid dream in similar terms: fluid, shifting, indeterminate, a space where anything can happen and nothing is fixed. And the moment of observation, the moment of lucidity, the moment of wave function collapse transforms the indefinite into the definite, the potential into the actual, the cloud of probability into a specific, concrete, experientially real outcome. There is a deeper dimension to this parallel. In quantum mechanics, the observer does not merely detect a pre-existing reality. The observer participates in creating reality. Before measurement, the electron does not have a definite position. It is not hiding somewhere waiting to be found. It genuinely has no position. The measurement creates the position. Similarly, in the lucid dream, the observer does not merely detect a pre-existing dream. The observer participates in shaping the dream. The lucid dreamer's attention, intention, and expectation actively influence the dream's content, determining what appears, what persists, and what dissolves. The dreamer who expects to find a door finds a door. The dreamer who expects to fly, flies. The dreamer who expects nothing finds the dream dissolving into formlessness. The expectation shapes the reality. The information determines the outcome. The observer creates the observed inside the dream, just as the observer creates the observed inside the quantum laboratory. This parallel between lucid dreaming and quantum observation has been noted by several researchers, including the physicist Fred Alan Wolf, who explored the connection in his book, The Dreaming Universe, and the consciousness researcher Alan Combs, who has written extensively about the parallels between dream states and quantum states. The parallel is suggestive rather than proven. We do not know whether the same quantum mechanism that produces wave function collapse in the laboratory also produces dream stabilization in the lucid dreamer's brain. But the structural similarity is striking. In both cases, the introduction of an observer transforms a fluid, indefinite, superposition-like state into a more stable, definite, collapsed state. In both cases, observation creates reality. In both cases, the observer participates in the production of the observed. And in both cases, the quality of the observation, the attention, the intention, the clarity of the observer's awareness determines the quality of the result. Henry Stapp's Process 1, the conscious choice of which quantum template to attend to, provides a specific mechanism through which lucid dreaming and quantum observation may be connected. In waking life, Process 1 operates continuously. Consciousness selects a template from the superposition of templates that the brain generates, and the selection collapses the superposition into a definite neural state. In normal dreaming, Process 1 may be suspended. The dreamer does not select, does not choose, does not direct attention deliberately. The templates arise and dissolve spontaneously, without conscious intervention, producing the fluid, uncontrolled, narrativeless quality of ordinary dreams. In lucid dreaming, Process 1 reactivates. The dreamer regains the capacity to select, to choose, to direct attention deliberately within the dream. The dreamer can choose to fly. The dreamer can choose to seek. The dreamer can choose to confront a nightmare figure, to explore a landscape, to ask a dream character a question. The choices are real. They produce specific, consistent, reproducible effects within the dream. The choices produce specific results that can be studied. Tadeusz Stumbries at Heidelberg University conducted a systematic study of lucid dream control, asking experienced lucid dreamers to perform specific tasks during their dreams: flying, passing through walls, finding specific objects, talking to dream characters, and performing mathematical calculations. The success rates varied by task. Simple motor actions like flying succeeded in over 80% of attempts, while complex cognitive tasks like mathematics succeeded in less than 30%. The variation is significant. It suggests that the dreaming brain has specific computational strengths and limitations, that the lucid dreamer's control is real but not unlimited, and that the dream world has its own internal consistency that resists arbitrary manipulation. The dream is not a blank canvas. It is a structured environment generated by the brain's model-building machinery, according to principles that the dreamer can influence but not fully control. The dreamer is a participant in the dream, not the sole author of it, and the mechanism of choice may be the same quantum mechanism that operates in waking life. Process 1. The conscious selection of a template from a superposition, collapsing the dream's possibilities into specific actualities through the power of deliberate attention. The quantum Zeno effect adds another dimension. In waking life, sustained attention stabilizes a quantum state, preventing it from evolving into other states, holding it in place against the natural tendency to decohere. We explored this in the fear investigation. Chronic fearful attention stabilizes the feared outcome, and the free will investigation, deliberate attention stabilizes the chosen template. In lucid dreaming, the same effect may operate. The lucid dreamer's sustained attention on the dream stabilizes the dream, preventing it from dissolving into incoherence, holding it in its current form against the natural tendency of the dreaming brain to shift scenes, morph characters, and break narrative continuity. Experienced lucid dreamers know this intuitively. They report that maintaining lucidity requires sustained attention, that looking away or allowing attention to wander causes the dream to destabilize, and that the most effective technique for prolonging a lucid dream is to focus attention on a specific sensory detail, the texture of a surface, the pattern of a floor, the sensation of touch, thereby stabilizing the dream through the Zeno effect of sustained observation. David Bohm's implicate order provides the deepest framework for understanding the relationship between dreaming and waking reality. In Bohm's framework, the explicate order, the world of distinct objects, definite locations, and sequential events, is a projection from the implicate order, the deeper reality in which everything is enfolded into everything else. The explicate order is the surface. The implicate order is the depth. And the relationship between them is the same relationship that the traditions describe between waking and dreaming. The surface world is a projection from a deeper source, and the deeper source is accessible when the surface world's filtering mechanisms are relaxed. Normal dreaming may be the brain's unfiltered access to the implicate order. When the sensory gates close during sleep, when the thalamus blocks external input, when the aminergic neurotransmitters that maintain waking consciousness decrease, when the prefrontal cortex goes offline, the brain's connection to the external world is severed. But the brain's connection to the implicate order may remain or may even be enhanced, freed from the competition with sensory data that normally dominates conscious processing. The dream may be what the implicate order looks like when it unfolds without the organizing constraint of sensory input, fluid, symbolic, archetypal, governed by emotional logic rather than physical logic, rich with meaning that the waking mind's rational filters normally suppress. This is consistent with the research of Jung and Pauli that we explored in the subconscious investigation. Jung proposed that dreams provide access to the collective unconscious, the deep layer of the psyche that contains the archetypes, the universal symbols, the shared patterns that appear across cultures and across centuries. Pauli, the Nobel physicist who collaborated with Jung, experienced this directly. His dreams contain mathematical symbols, quaternion structures, and physical insights that his waking mind had not yet formulated. The dreams accessed information that the waking mind did not possess, information from a source that transcends the individual brain's stored memories and learned associations. The most famous example is Pauli's world clock dream, a vision of two perpendicular discs rotating around a common axis, with a golden ring at the center connecting them. Jung interpreted the dream as a mandala, a symbol of psychic wholeness and cosmic order. But the dream also contained a mathematical structure, a quaternion, a four-dimensional rotational symmetry that is fundamental to the mathematics of quantum mechanics. Pauli did not consciously know about this connection when he dreamed it. The dream accessed a mathematical physical insight before the waking mind formulated it. The information came from somewhere, not from Pauli's conscious knowledge, not from his daily experience, but from a deeper source that had access to structural relationships that the waking mind had not yet articulated. If the collective unconscious is the psychological expression of the implicate order, as we proposed in the sign, subconscious investigation, then dreams are the brain's nightly communion with the deeper informational structure of reality. Lucid dreaming transforms this communion from a passive reception into an active exploration. The normal dreamer receives the implicate orders unfolding without awareness, without agency, without the capacity to investigate what they are receiving. The lucid dreamer receives the implicate orders unfolding with awareness, with the capacity to observe, to question, to navigate, to seek specific information, to interact deliberately with the archetypal content that the implicate order provides. Lucid dreaming is active exploration of the implicate order, the conscious navigation of the informational depth that underlies the surface reality of waking life. And the traditions that developed lucid dreaming as a spiritual technology, Tibetan dream yoga, Hindu yoga nidra, Sufi dream practice, may have developed it precisely for this purpose, to train the practitioner in the conscious exploration of a dimension of reality that is deeper, more fundamental, and more informationally rich than the waking world that ordinary consciousness inhabits. The filter theory of consciousness which we developed in the OBE investigation applies directly to the lucid dreaming phenomenon. If the brain filters consciousness rather than producing it, if the brain's function is to constrain a non-local field of awareness to the narrow, body-centered, survival, optimized focus of waking consciousness, then sleep is a partial relaxation of the filter. The sensory gates close, the prefrontal constraint loosens. The default mode network, which maintains the ego structure during waking, becomes less dominant, and consciousness, freed from the filter's constraint, expands, accessing the implicate order, perceiving the archetypal patterns, experiencing the non-local information that the waking filter normally excludes. Normal dreaming is the filter relaxed but consciousness unaware. The expansion occurs, but the dreamer does not know it is occurring. The information from the implicate order floods in, but the dreamer experiences it as just a dream, confusing, fragmented, illogical, and easily dismissed upon waking. Lucid dreaming is the filter relaxed and consciousness aware. The expansion occurs and the dreamer knows it is occurring. The information from the implicate order floods in, and the dreamer can observe it, evaluate it, navigate it, and integrate it. The filter is open, the awareness is present, and the combination expanded access plus maintained awareness produces the optimal state for exploring the deeper dimensions of reality that the traditions describe. Robin Carhart Harris's research on psychedelics, which we explored in the OBE investigation, provides a pharmacological parallel. Psilocybin reduces default mode network activity, loosens the ego structure, and expands consciousness, producing experiences that participants describe as among the most meaningful of their lives. The mechanism is the relaxation of the filter, and the experience is structurally similar to lucid dreaming, vivid, hyperreal, meaningful, and characterized by the perception that the experiencer is accessing a dimension of reality that is normally hidden from waking consciousness. The psychedelic experience is a chemically induced filter relaxation. The lucid dream is a naturally occurring filter relaxation. And there is a third. The near-death experience is an extreme, involuntary filter relaxation produced by the physiological crisis of cardiac arrest. All three produce structurally similar experiences: expanded awareness, access to normally hidden dimensions of reality, the perception of hyperreal vividness, the sense that the experience is more real than ordinary waking consciousness. All three involve reduced default mode network activity and reduced prefrontal filtering, and all three are described by experiencers in the same language as revelatory, as transformative, as encounters with a reality that is deeper and more fundamental than the waking world. The convergence across these three states, lucid dreaming, psychedelic experience, and near-death experience, is significant because the three states are produced by completely different mechanisms. Lucid dreaming is produced by natural sleep processes. Psychedelic experience is produced by chemical intervention. Near-death experience is produced by physiological crisis. Three different causes. One structural result: the relaxation of the brain's filtering system and the expansion of consciousness beyond its normal waking parameters. The consistency of the result across such different causes suggests that the expansion is not an artifact of the cause. It is a property of consciousness itself, a natural capacity that is normally suppressed by the filter, and that emerges whenever the filter is relaxed, regardless of the mechanism of relaxation. And both produce the same result: consciousness expanded beyond its normal waking parameters, perceiving realities that the filter normally excludes, experiencing information that the waking mind cannot access. The connection to the information investigation is fundamental. If reality is made of information rather than matter, if the three-dimensional world is a holographic projection from an informational surface, then the dream is the purest expression of informational reality, available to human experience. In the dream, there is no matter. There are no atoms. There are no photons, no pressure waves, no molecules. There is only information organized by consciousness, structured by the brain's reality modeling machinery, experienced as indistinguishable from the matter-based reality of waking life. The dream is information without matter. It is the code without the hardware. It is the holographic image without the physical substrate. And the fact that the dream is indistinguishable from waking experience, the fact that the brain treats the informational reality of the dream and the material reality of waking life as equivalent, is the most powerful evidence available that information, not matter, is the fundamental substance of experience. If you can experience a complete, convincing, emotionally real world made entirely of information, and you do, every night, then the claim that the waking world requires matter to be real is undercut by your own nightly experience. The dream proves that information is sufficient for reality. And if information is sufficient for reality, then matter may be unnecessary, a delivery mechanism, a data source, a medium through which information arrives at the brain's processing centers, but not the substance from which experience is made. The substance of experience is informational, and the dream demonstrates this every night, constructing a complete, convincing, emotionally real world from nothing but information. Consider the implications for the holographic principle. If the waking world is a three-dimensional holographic projection from a two-dimensional informational surface, as the physics of Mulder-Sina Susskind and Van Ramsdonk suggest, then the waking world is already a kind of dream. It is already a construction projected from an informational source onto the screen of consciousness. The difference between the waking hologram and the dream hologram is not a difference between reality and illusion. It is a difference between two kinds of projection, one constrained by external data encoded on the holographic surface, the other unconstrained, generated freely by the brain's internal information. Both are projections, both are constructions, both are informational. The dream is not a degraded copy of reality. It may be reality in its purest form, information without the intermediary of matter, code without the complications of hardware. The holographic image without the physical substrate that the waking version requires, a delivery mechanism, a data source, a medium through which information arrives, but not the substance from which experience is made. The traditions draw this conclusion explicitly. The Tibetan Buddhist teaching on dream yoga does not merely instruct the practitioner to become lucid in dreams. It instructs the practitioner to use the lucid dream as a laboratory for investigating the nature of reality. In the lucid dream, the practitioner experiments transforming objects, multiplying their body, flying through walls, visiting other realms, and through these experiments, the practitioner discovers, through direct experience, that the dream reality is malleable, that it responds to intention, that it is constructed by consciousness rather than existing independently of consciousness. And then the practitioner is instructed to apply the same investigation to waking life, to ask whether the waking world, like the dream world, is constructed by consciousness, whether it responds to intention, whether it is as malleable as the dream when approached with the right quality of awareness. The dream yoga is not about dreaming. It is about waking up inside the dream, and then waking up inside the larger dream that the traditions call samsara, and that the physics describes as the holographic projection of an informational surface. The next part of this investigation will enter the traditions fully, hearing their detailed descriptions of dream practice, dream navigation, and the use of lucid dreaming as a technology for spiritual transformation. And the descriptions, as we will see, are not merely poetic. They are technical, precise, systematic, and reproducible, developed through centuries of empirical investigation by practitioners who treated the dream world with the same seriousness that physicists bring to the physical world. Because the traditions understood what the physics is now confirming, the dream is not less real than waking life. It may be more real, a direct encounter with the informational ground from which both dreaming and waking reality are projected. The traditions did not treat dreaming as a curiosity. They treated it as a technology, a precision instrument for investigating the nature of consciousness, for accessing dimensions of reality that waking perception cannot reach, and for training the mind in the skills that the contemplative path requires. And the technology they developed was not vague or impressionistic. It was specific, systematic, and reproducible, with detailed instructions, progressive stages, diagnostic criteria for evaluating progress, and a theoretical framework that explained not merely how to become lucid in a dream, but why lucid dreaming matters, what it reveals about the nature of the mind, and how it connects to the deepest questions about reality, identity, and liberation. Tibetan Buddhism developed the most comprehensive lucid dreaming technology in any tradition, a complete training system embedded within the 6 yogas of Naropa, the advanced tantric practices transmitted from the Indian Mahasiddha Naropa to the Tibetan translator Marpa, to the poet Saint Milarepa, and through him to every school of Tibetan Buddhism. Dream Yoga Milam is the 4th of the 6 yogas, and it is considered indispensable to the path, not optional, not supplementary. Indispensable because dream yoga provides something that no other practice can provide: direct, experiential evidence that reality is a construction of consciousness. The training proceeds in 4 stages, each building on the previous, each requiring mastery before the next can begin. The first stage is recognition, learning to recognize the dream as a dream while still inside it. The technique begins during the day, not at night. The practitioner cultivates a habit of illusory body. Practice repeatedly throughout the waking day, pausing to consider, is this a dream? The practitioner examines the waking world with the same critical attention that a scientist brings to an experiment. They look at their hands. They read text and look away and read it again. They test the consistency of the environment. They notice the qualities of light, of texture, of spatial depth, and they hold the thought, this might be a dream, not as a philosophical proposition, but as a genuine investigation, a sincere attempt to determine, through direct examination, whether the current experience is waking or dreaming. The practice sounds simple. It is not. The waking mind's certainty that it is awake is almost impossible to dislodge. The transparent model is seamless. The waking world looks, feels, sounds, and smells exactly as a real world should. And the idea that it might be a dream seems absurd in the face of its overwhelming sensory evidence. But the practice is not designed to convince the waking mind that it is dreaming. It is designed to install a habit, a reflexive, automatic tendency to question the reality of experience that will carry over into the dream state. The waking mind cannot be fooled, but the dreaming mind can be awakened, and the trigger for the awakening is the habit of questioning that was planted during the day. When the habit fires during a dream, when the dreamer, out of ingrained reflex, pauses to ask, is this a dream? And notices that their hands have 6 fingers, or that the text on a sign keeps changing, or that the physics is wrong, lucidity occurs. This is exactly what LaBerge's mild technique prescribes, and the structural identity between the Tibetan practice and LaBerge's scientific technique is not a coincidence. Both exploit prospective memory. Both plant a mnemonic seed during waking that fires during dreaming. Both rely on the habit of reality testing to trigger lucidity. The Tibetan tradition developed the technique centuries before LaBerge through empirical observation of what works, refined through generations of practitioners who reported their results to their teachers and received feedback and correction. The tradition did not have the vocabulary of prospective memory or mnemonic induction, but it had the technique, and the technique works, whether you call it millennium or mild. The recognition is not intellectual, it is visceral, a sudden, full-body shift in awareness, a jolt of clarity, an unmistakable transition from the dreaming mind's uncritical immersion to the lucid mind's reflective awareness. The second stage is transformation, learning to manipulate the content of the dream through deliberate intention. Once the dreamer is lucid, the tradition instructs them to experiment. Transform a small object into a large one. Transform a large object into a small one. Transform fire into water. Transform one person into many. Multiply your own body. Fly. Pass through walls. Visit distant places. The purpose of these exercises is not entertainment, though the exercises are, by all accounts, profoundly enjoyable. The purpose is epistemological. The practitioner is learning, through direct experience, that the dream's content is not fixed. It is malleable. It responds to intention. It is created by consciousness. And if the dream's content is created by consciousness, if it can be transformed by a change in the observer's intention, then the dream is not an objective reality that exists independently of the observer. It is a subjective construction that the observer is generating. The dream is made of mind. The exercises are progressive. The beginner transforms small objects, a flower into a stone, a cup into a bird. The intermediate practitioner transforms larger elements, turning day into night, transforming the landscape, changing the season. The advanced practitioner transforms the self, changing their own body, appearing as different persons, as different genders, as animals, as formless awareness. Each level of transformation deepens the insight. Transforming an object reveals that objects are mind-created. Transforming the environment reveals that the entire perceptual field is mind-created. Transforming the self reveals that the experiencer, the one who seems to be the stable point around which the dream rotates, is also mind-created. Nothing in the dream is fixed. Nothing in the dream is given. Everything, objects, environment, self, is a product of consciousness. And the lucid practitioner who has experienced this directly has a knowledge that no philosophical argument can provide. And the practitioner who has transformed fire into water inside a dream has direct, experiential proof that mind creates, reality proof that no amount of philosophical argument can provide, and that no amount of scientific data can match in terms of personal conviction. The third stage is multiplying, learning to generate multiple simultaneous dream bodies, to be in several places at once within the dream, to fragment the sense of a single self-location into a distributed awareness that perceives from multiple perspectives simultaneously. This is the most challenging stage of dream yoga and the most relevant to the quantum framework we have assembled. The lucid dreamer who generates multiple bodies within a dream is experiencing non-locality, the perception of reality from multiple spatial locations simultaneously. The dreamer is not located in a single body. The dreamer is located everywhere, observing from multiple perspectives, experiencing multiple viewpoints, inhabiting multiple bodies that are all equally me. The experience is reported as one of the most disorienting and most illuminating in the entire dream yoga sequence. The practitioner does not merely see from multiple locations. They experience from multiple locations, feeling the ground under multiple pairs of feet, seeing the landscape from multiple pairs of eyes, thinking from multiple minds that are all simultaneously me. The sense of being a single, located self, the sense that I am here and not there, dissolves into a distributed awareness that is simultaneously everywhere within the dream. The dissolution is not frightening. It is liberating. The practitioner reports that the distributed state feels more natural, more spacious, more fundamentally right than the contracted, single location awareness of ordinary experience. This is the dream equivalent of quantum non-locality, the property of quantum systems that allows correlation across any distance without signal transmission. And the tradition prescribes it as a practice, a deliberate cultivation of the capacity for non-local awareness, developed through the controlled conditions of the lucid dream, applicable ultimately to the non-dual awareness that the tradition identifies as the fundamental nature of consciousness. The fourth and final stage is recognizing the dream as the clear light, learning to perceive the luminous, empty awareness that underlies all dream content, that generates all dream imagery, and that persists when all dream imagery dissolves. This is the deepest stage of dream yoga, and it connects directly to the bardo practice we explored in the OBE investigation. The clear light ozal is the fundamental nature of mind, the awareness that is present in waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, but that is normally concealed by the content of these states. In deep sleep, the clear light is present but unrecognized. The awareness is there but no one is aware of it. In the lucid dream, the clear light can be recognized because the practitioner has developed, through the three previous stages, the capacity to maintain awareness while the dream content is dissolving, to remain conscious as the dream fades, and to perceive the luminous awareness that remains when the last image has disappeared and nothing is left but consciousness itself. This experience, the perception of consciousness without content, awareness without objects, the clear light of the mind's fundamental nature, is considered the most important experience in the entire Tibetan Buddhist path. It is the same experience that the Bardo Thodol instructs the dying person to recognize at the moment of death. It is the same experience that the highest meditation practices are designed to produce. And it is the same experience that the neuroscience describes as the state that occurs when the default mode network is maximally suppressed, when the ego structure dissolves, when the self-referential processing that normally dominates consciousness is silenced, and what remains is pure awareness, the awareness that was always there, beneath the noise, beneath the content, beneath the construction, as the ground from which all experience arises and into which all experience returns. The clear light experience in dream yoga is not theoretical. It is a specific perceptual event that practitioners describe with remarkable consistency. The dream imagery fades, the landscapes dissolve, the characters disappear, the narrative ceases. What remains is not darkness. It is not blankness. It is luminosity, a radiant, empty, aware space that has no objects in it, but that is itself intensely vivid, intensely present, intensely alive. The luminosity is not a thing you see. It is the seeing itself, the awareness that was always present behind every image, beneath every thought, within every perception, as the medium in which all experience appears. The clear light is consciousness without an object, the mirror before any image is reflected in it, the screen before any film is projected on it, the silence before any sound breaks it. And the recognition of the clear light, the direct experiential apprehension of awareness as the ground of all experience is, according to the tradition, the single most transformative event in a human life. The practical connection to death is explicit. The Tibetan tradition teaches that the clear light appears naturally at the moment of death, when the body's systems shut down, when the senses close, when the brain's activity ceases, and consciousness is released from the physical form that has been constraining it. The clear light at death is brighter, more vivid, more overwhelming than the clear light in the dream, because at death the filter is completely removed, while in the dream the filter is only partially relaxed. The practitioner who has recognized the clear light in the dream has a reference point, a memory of the luminous awareness, a familiarity with its quality, a capacity to recognize it when it appears. And the recognition at death is liberation. Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, a contemporary Tibetan Buddhist teacher who has written the most accessible modern guide to dream yoga, The Tibetan Yogas of Dream and Sleep, describes the purpose of the practice with characteristic directness. If we cannot carry our practice into sleep, if we lose ourselves every night, what chance do we have of being aware when death comes? The question is not rhetorical, it is pragmatic. Death, in the Tibetan framework, is the ultimate dissolution of the dream, the moment when the waking world, the dream world, and the deep sleep state all dissolve simultaneously, and the clear light appears in its fullest, most undisguised form. The practitioner who has trained in dream yoga, who can recognize the clear light within the dream, has the best chance of recognizing the clear light at the moment of death. And recognition of the clear light at death is liberation, the end of the cycle of birth and death, the awakening from the dream of samsara, the return of consciousness to its fundamental, unconditioned, luminous nature. Hinduism approaches lucid dreaming through the practice of yoga nidra, yogic sleep, and the concept of sankalpa, the intention seed planted in the fertile soil of the sleeping mind. Yoga nidra is a systematic relaxation technique that guides the practitioner through progressive stages of bodily awareness, breath awareness, visualization, and intention setting, ultimately producing a state that the tradition describes as conscious sleep, a condition in which the body is fully relaxed, the senses are withdrawn, the mind is quiet, and yet awareness is maintained. The technique is precise. The practitioner lies in shavasana, the corpse pose, and follows the teacher's voice through a systematic rotation of awareness through the body, moving attention from point to point with a speed that prevents the analytical mind from engaging. The rotation is followed by awareness of the breath, awareness of sensations, heaviness, lightness, warmth, coolness, visualization of specific images, a candle flame, a lotus, a clear blue sky, and finally the sankalpa, the intention seed. The entire process takes approximately 45 minutes. and the physiological changes are measurable. Reduced heart rate, reduced blood pressure, increased theta and delta brainwave activity, reduced cortisol, increased GABA. The state that results is physiologically distinct from both waking and sleep. A third state that the EEG characterizes as a predominance of theta waves with maintained alpha, a combination that does not occur in either ordinary waking or ordinary sleep. The practitioner is not awake in the ordinary sense. They are not asleep in the ordinary sense. They are in the liminal state between waking and sleeping, the hypnagogic transition that LaBerge identified as the entry point for wild, wake-initiated lucid dreams, and that the Hindu tradition has been cultivating as a free-fine, spiritual practice for millennia. The sankalpa, the intention planted during yoga nidra, is one of the most powerful techniques in the Hindu contemplative toolkit. At the beginning and end of each yoga nidra session, the practitioner formulates a short, positive statement of intention, a resolution, a direction, a seed of transformation. The sankalpa is not a wish. It is not a prayer. It is a direct instruction to the unconscious mind planted during the hypnagogic state, when the conscious mind's critical filters are relaxed and the unconscious mind is maximally receptive. The tradition teaches that a sankalpa planted in yoga nidra has extraordinary power, that it reaches the deepest layers of the unconscious, takes root in the alaya vijnana, and grows into manifestation with a certainty and an inevitability that consciously willed intentions cannot match. Research on yoga nidra has confirmed the tradition's claims about its psychological efficacy. Kamakhya Kumar at Patna University demonstrated that yoga nidra significantly reduces anxiety and depression scores in clinical populations. Richard Miller, a clinical psychologist who developed the IREST protocol based on yoga nidra, has conducted studies with military veterans showing that the practice reduces PTSD symptoms, improves sleep quality, and decreases chronic pain. The Department of Defense has approved IREST as a complementary therapy for PTSD treatment in military healthcare facilities, one of the few contemplative practices to receive such institutional endorsement. The sankalpa, planted during the theta-dominant state of yoga nidra, they appears to have a therapeutic potency that waking affirmations cannot match, reaching deeper into the unconscious processing that shapes behavior, emotion, and physiological state. This connects directly to the subconscious investigation, the finding that the unconscious mind processes information with a speed and a depth that the conscious mind cannot rival, and that intentions planted in the unconscious produce effects that conscious effort cannot replicate. The Mandukya Upanishad's concept of Turiya, the fourth state, the witness consciousness, provides the theoretical framework for understanding why lucid dreaming matters in the Hindu tradition. Turiya is not a state alongside waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. It is the consciousness that pervades all three states, the awareness that is present in each state, but that is not identified with any of them. In waking, Turiya is concealed by the content of sensory experience. In dreaming, Turiya is concealed by the content of dream imagery. In deep sleep, Turiya is concealed by the absence of content. Lucid dreaming is the first crack in the concealment, the first moment when Turiya becomes visible within a state that normally conceals it. The dreamer who becomes lucid is catching a glimpse of Turiya, the witness, the ground, the awareness that watches the dream without being the dream. And the tradition teaches that this glimpse, once stabilized through practice, can be extended first into waking life, becoming lucid while awake, seeing the transparent model, recognizing the construction, and then into deep sleep, maintaining awareness even in the contentless depths of dreamless sleep, until Turiya is continuously present in all three states, and the practitioner abides permanently in the fourth state, the state of liberation, of Jivan Mukti, of living awakening. The Islamic tradition's approach to lucid dreaming operates through the concept of the alam al-mithal, the imaginal world that Ibn Arabi described as the barzakh between the material and the spiritual. The barzakh is not a metaphor. It is a real dimension of existence, a domain in which spiritual realities take imaginal form, in which the abstract becomes concrete, in which meanings are experienced as images and truths are perceived as visions. The dream is the primary portal to the barzakh and the lucid dream, in which the dreamer maintains awareness and agency within the imaginal world. Is the portal fully opened? Ibn Arabi distinguished between three types of imagination: disconnected imagination, the random, meaningless imagery of ordinary dreaming; connected imagination, the meaningful imagery that arises from the unconscious mind's processing of spiritual realities; and creative imagination, the deliberate, conscious engagement with the imaginal world in which the practitioner actively participates in the creation and interpretation of visionary content. The Islamic dream science Ilm al-Ruya developed a sophisticated taxonomy of dream content that parallels modern dream research in its systematic rigor. Dreams were classified not only by their source divine, self, or satanic, but by their timing. Dreams near dawn are considered more reliable, consistent with the modern finding that REM periods lengthen toward morning and produce more vivid, narratively coherent dreams. Their emotional quality dreams, accompanied by peace and clarity, are considered more trustworthy than dreams accompanied by confusion and distress. And their symbolic structure, some dreams are literal, others require interpretation through a systematic hermeneutic that Ibn Sirin codified in his Tafsir al-Ahlam, one of the most comprehensive dream interpretation manuals in any tradition. The rigor of the classification, the systematic attention to timing, emotional quality, symbolic structure, and verification through subsequent events suggests an empirical approach to dream phenomena that, while framed in theological language, shares the same investigative spirit as the modern scientific study of dreaming. The lucid dream, in Ibn Arabi's framework, is the arena of creative imagination, the state in which the practitioner is not merely receiving imagery from the barzakh, but actively exploring it, questioning it, interacting with it, and extracting spiritual knowledge from it. The practice of muraqabah, contemplative watchfulness, is the Sufi technique most closely associated with dream cultivation. The practitioner sits in meditation, focusing on the heart center, maintaining awareness of the divine presence, and progressively withdrawing attention from external sensory input. As attention withdraws from the senses, the imaginal faculty awakens, images arise, visions appear, the barzakh opens. The transition from muraqabah to dream is seamless. The practitioner who practices muraqabah before sleep enters the dream state with awareness already activated, with the imaginal faculty already engaged, and with the connection to the barzakh already established. This is the Islamic wild, the maintenance of awareness across the transition from waking to sleep, facilitated by the contemplative practice that precedes sleep and that establishes the conditions for lucid entry into the dream. Christianity's engagement with lucid dreaming is embedded in its broader theology of discernment, the capacity to distinguish between divine inspiration, demonic deception, and the products of the individual imagination. The Desert Fathers developed sophisticated criteria for evaluating nocturnal experiences, testing them against scripture, against the fruits of the Spirit, against the counsel of spiritual directors, and against the internal sense of peace or disturbance that the experience produces. The tradition does not encourage the deliberate cultivation of dream states. This is a significant difference from the Eastern traditions, but it does recognize that dreams can be vehicles of divine communication, that some nocturnal experiences carry genuine spiritual content, and that the capacity to discern the source and meaning of such experiences is an important spiritual skill. Gregory of Nyssa, the 4th century Cappadocian father, wrote extensively about the relationship between sleep, dreaming, and the soul's capacity for divine perception. Gregory argued that sleep removes the tumult of the senses, the constant bombardment of sensory information that occupies the soul during waking life, and prevents it from attending to the subtler movements of divine grace. When the senses are silenced, when the body sleeps and the soul is freed from its sensory duties, the soul can turn its attention inward and perceive realities that the sensory noise normally conceals. Gregory went further. He described cases of prophetic dreams, dreams that contained information about future events, about distant happenings, about truths that the dreamer could not have known through ordinary channels. Gregory did not attribute all dreams to divine inspiration. He was careful to distinguish between the products of the imagination and the genuine movements of divine grace. But he recognized that the sleeping mind, freed from sensory distraction, has access to information that the waking mind cannot reach. And the capacity to perceive this information depends on the purity of the soul, on the degree to which the soul's perceptive capacity has been refined through prayer, fasting, and the cultivation of virtue. The more transparent the soul becomes, the more the ego's distortions are removed, the more the passions are quieted, the more the noise is reduced, the more clearly the soul perceives the divine reality that is always present, but that is normally concealed by the tumult of sensory and emotional activity. This is the filter theory. In patristic language, the brain's sensory processing as a veil that conceals rather than reveals, and sleep as the lifting of the veil that allows deeper perception. The Aboriginal Dreamtime tradition adds a dimension that no other tradition provides. The claim that the dream is not merely a window into deeper reality, but the source of physical reality itself. In Aboriginal cosmology, the dreamtime is not a past event. It is an ongoing creative process, the continuous dreaming from which the physical world is continuously projected. The ancestral beings who created the landscape did so by dreaming it, by singing and envisioning the features of the earth, projecting their creative imagination into material form. And the songlines, the paths that the ancestral beings travelled across the landscape are simultaneously physical routes, musical compositions, and informational codes that encode the creative acts of the dreamtime. To walk a songline is to retrace the creation. To sing a songline is to reenact the creation. And to dream truly, deeply, with the awareness and intentionality that the tradition cultivates through lifelong practice, is to participate in the ongoing creative act that sustains the physical world in existence. The Aboriginal understanding inverts the Western hierarchy between waking and dreaming. In the Western framework, both scientific and cultural, waking is primary and dreaming is secondary. Waking is real, dreaming is not real. Waking produces useful information, dreaming produces noise. The Aboriginal tradition reverses this entirely. Dreaming is primary, waking is secondary. The dream is the source, the waking world is the projection. And the most important human activity is not the manipulation of the physical world during waking hours, but the participation in the creative dreaming from which the physical world emerges. The convergence across traditions is structural. Every tradition recognizes dreaming as access to a deeper dimension of reality. Every tradition develops specific techniques for cultivating awareness within the dream. Every tradition identifies the lucid dream as a training ground for perceiving the constructed nature of experience. And every tradition connects lucid dreaming to its ultimate soteriological goal: liberation in Buddhism, moksha in Hinduism, fana in Sufism, theoria in Christianity, reunion with the dreamtime in Aboriginal practice. And every tradition warns against the same danger, using lucid dreaming for entertainment rather than insight. The Tibetan tradition warns against becoming attached to the dream, using lucidity for pleasurable experiences rather than for the investigation of consciousness. The Hindu tradition warns against mistaking the siddhi's powers that arise in the dream for the goal of the practice. The goal is not power, but liberation. The Sufi tradition warns against mistaking the visions of the barzakh for ultimate reality. The imaginal world is real but intermediate, a stepping stone rather than a destination. The warnings are consistent because the danger is consistent. The lucid dream is so vivid, so pleasurable, so much more interesting than ordinary waking life, that the practitioner can become trapped in it, using the technology for recreation rather than realization, for escape rather than awakening. Every tradition insists that the dream is a tool, not a playground, a means to an end, not an end in itself. The dream is not peripheral to the spiritual path. It is central and nightly laboratory for investigating the nature of consciousness, a training ground for the skills that liberation requires, and a preview of the states that the traditions describe as the goal of all contemplative practice. The final part of this investigation will put it all together: the neuroscience, the quantum physics, the traditions, and address the question that lucid dreaming poses with unavoidable directness. If you can wake up inside a dream, can you wake up inside waking life? And if you do, what will you see? 3 investigations, 3 independent approaches to an experience that 10% of the population has spontaneously, that every major tradition has cultivated systematically, and that neuroscience has confirmed as a genuine, measurable, reproducible state of consciousness. And the convergence between the science, the physics, and the traditions produces a picture that transforms lucid dreaming from an interesting sleep phenomenon into a window onto the deepest questions about the nature of reality itself. The neuroscience established the facts. LaBerge proved that lucid dreaming is real, that consciousness can be present within the dream, that the dreamer can communicate from inside the dream through prearranged eye signals, and that the state is physiologically distinct from both waking and ordinary REM sleep. Voss identified the neural signature 40, Hertz gamma activity in the frontal cortex, present in waking and lucid dreaming but absent in normal REM. Voss then demonstrated that applying this frequency to the sleeping brain through transcranial stimulation induces lucidity, proving that the frequency determines the state, that consciousness can be switched on inside a dream by providing the right electromagnetic signal to the right brain region. Dresler confirmed that lucid dreaming activates the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive function, metacognition, and self-reflective awareness, creating a hybrid state in which the back of the brain dreams, while the front of the brain is aware. Hobson recognized lucid dreaming as a genuinely distinct third state of consciousness, neither waking nor dreaming, but a dissociated condition that reveals the separability of awareness from sensory input. And Erlacher demonstrated that lucid dream practice produces real, measurable improvements in waking performance, because the brain cannot distinguish between a vividly experienced dream action and a physically executed waking action. The quantum physics provided the framework. The observer effect parallels the lucid dream with structural precision. The introduction of an observer into a system that was previously unobserved transforms a fluid, indefinite, superposition-like state into a stable, definite, collapsed state. Process 1. The conscious selection of a template from a superposition may operate in the lucid dream just as it operates in waking life. giving the dreamer the capacity to choose, to direct, to shape the dream's content through deliberate intention. The Zeno effect, the stabilization of a quantum state through sustained observation, parallels the lucid dreamer's experience, that sustained attention stabilizes the dream while distracted attention allows it to dissolve. The implicate order provides the ontological ground. The dream may be the brain's unfiltered access to the deeper informational structure from which both waking and dreaming reality are projected. And the filter theory explains the mechanism the brain constrains consciousness to a narrow, body-centered, survival-optimized focus during waking, and sleep relaxes this constraint, allowing consciousness to expand into domains that the waking filter normally excludes. The traditions provided the technology and the map. Tibetan dream yoga prescribes 4 progressive stages: recognition, transformation, multiplication, and clear light perception, each designed to deepen the practitioner's experiential understanding that reality is a construction of consciousness. Hindu yoga nidra cultivates the liminal state between waking and sleeping, planting intention seeds in the fertile soil of the unconscious mind. Islamic dream science classifies dream content with systematic rigor and identifies the dream as a portal to the alam al-mithal, the imaginal world that mediates between the material and the spiritual. Christian discernment tradition evaluates nocturnal experiences against criteria of spiritual authenticity. Aboriginal Dreamtime cosmology reverses the Western hierarchy between waking and dreaming, placing the dream at the foundation of reality rather than at its periphery. Now, let us confront the objections. The first objection is the neural reduction objection. Lucid dreaming is nothing more than the reactivation of the prefrontal cortex during REM sleep. There is no mystery. There is no quantum dimension. There is no access to deeper realities. The DLPFC comes online, the dreamer gains metacognitive awareness, and the resulting hybrid state, while interesting from a neuroscience perspective, does not tell us anything about the nature of reality. It tells us about the nature of the brain. The dream is still a brain construction, the lucidity is still a brain state, and the claim that lucid dreaming provides access to the implicate order, the quantum vacuum, or any dimension beyond the brain's own neural activity is unsupported speculation. This objection is the strongest version of the materialist position, and it must be given full weight. The neural mechanisms of lucid dreaming are real and well documented. The DLPFC does reactivate, the gamma frequency does appear, the hybrid state is a neural state, and the most parsimonious explanation, the explanation that requires the fewest assumptions, is that lucid dreaming is a brain phenomenon, nothing more. But the objection, while valid in what it asserts, is incomplete in what it excludes. The neural mechanism explains how lucid dreaming occurs. It does not explain what the experience reveals. The fact that the DLPFC reactivation produces metacognitive awareness within a dream does not address the deeper question. What does metacognitive awareness within a dream tell us about the relationship between consciousness and reality? The answer, which the neural reduction objection systematically avoids, is that it tells us something extraordinary, that the brain constructs reality, not metaphorically, literally. Every night, the brain constructs a complete, convincing, emotionally real world from nothing but internal information. And the lucid dream is the moment when the dreamer catches the brain in the act. The neural mechanism makes the catching possible, but the insight that reality is constructed, that the construction is normally transparent, and that transparency can be broken is not a neural fact. It is an ontological revelation, and the ontological revelation is the same whether you interpret it through the lens of neuroscience, quantum physics, or Tibetan Buddhism. Consider what the neural reduction objection must concede even on its own terms. The brain constructs the dream. This is not disputed. But if the brain constructs the dream a complete, convincing, emotionally real world, then the brain also constructs the waking world. The same neural machinery, the same model-building processes, the same reality-generating engine is running in both states. The only difference is the data source. And if the brain constructs the waking world, if the colors, the sounds, the textures, the spatial depth, the temporal flow are all products of neural processing rather than direct perceptions of external reality, then the materialists' cherished distinction between real, waking, and not real, dreaming, collapses. Both are constructions, both are models, both are generated by the same brain, using the same processes. The neural reduction objection, pushed to its logical conclusion, does not save materialism. It undermines it by revealing that the real world of the materialist is as much a neural construction as the dream world they dismiss. The second objection is the dream is just imagination. Objection. Lucid dreams are vivid, but they are not real. They are internally generated fantasies, products of the brain's imagination, no different in kind from daydreams or visualizations, merely more vivid and more immersive. The claim that dreams provide access to deeper realities, to the implicate order, to the collective unconscious, to the alam al-mithal, is romantic but unfounded. Dreams reflect the dreamer's memories, expectations, and emotional preoccupations. They do not reflect external realities. They do not provide genuine information about anything beyond the dreamer's own mind. This objection is partially valid. Most dream content is generated from the dreamer's own memories, concerns, and emotional states. The dream is not a television receiving signals from another dimension. It is primarily a product of the dreamer's own neural processing. But the objection is too strong in its denial. It does not account for the documented cases of anomalous dream information, dreams that contain knowledge the dreamer could not have acquired through normal channels. Pauli's quaternion dreams contained mathematical structures that his waking mind had not yet formulated. Precognitive dreams documented in the research of Stanley Krippner at Maimonides Medical Center, Darrell Bem at Cornell University, and the extensive case files of the Society for Psychical Research contain information about future events that has not yet occurred and that cannot be attributed to inference, coincidence, or confabulation in every case. The evidence for anomalous dream information is not conclusive. It is contested, debated, and subject to the same methodological challenges that plague all parapsychological research, but it is not zero. And if even a small fraction of the documented cases represent genuine anomalous information that the dreamer could not have acquired through normal sensory channels, then the dream is not merely an internal fantasy. It is at least sometimes a channel through which information from beyond the individual brain reaches conscious awareness. The implicate order hypothesis provides a framework for this. If the unconscious mind accesses the implicate order through quantum resonance, and if the dream is the brain's most direct expression of unconscious processing, then anomalous dream information is the implicate order's content surfacing into dream imagery. The hypothesis is speculative. The framework is not proven. But the evidence, suggestive, contested, but persistent, is consistent with the framework. Abraham Lincoln reportedly dreamed of his own assassination days before it occurred, seeing a corpse lying in state in the White House, and being told by a mourner that the president had been killed. Mark Twain reported a vivid dream of his brother, Henry, lying in a metal coffin with a bouquet of white flowers and a single red rose on his chest, and weeks later, his brother died in a steamboat explosion and was laid out in exactly the configuration Twain had dreamed, including the single red rose placed by a mourner These are anecdotes, not controlled experiments. They are subject to memory distortion, selective reporting, and retroactive embellishment. But they are not isolated, they are part of a vast body of reported precognitive dreams that spans cultures, centuries, and demographics. And while anecdotes do not constitute scientific proof, the sheer volume and consistency of the reports suggests a phenomenon that deserves investigation rather than dismissal. The third objection is the therapeutic limitation objection. Lucid dreaming is claimed to be transformative, but the evidence for lasting psychological transformation from lucid dreaming practice is thin. Most lucid dreamers use the experience for recreation, flying, exploring, fulfilling fantasies. The spiritual transformation that the traditions describe, the recognition of the clear light, the awakening from samsara, the dissolution of the ego, is reported by advanced contemplatives who have practiced for decades, not by the typical Western lucid dreamer who learned the technique from a YouTube video. The gap between the tradition's claims and the average practitioner's experience is enormous, and the gap suggests that the transformative potential of lucid dreaming has been overstated. This objection is fair. The average lucid dreamer's experience is recreational, not transformative. The tradition's claims about spiritual transformation through dream practice are made in the context of comprehensive, contemplative programs, years of ethical training, meditation practice, philosophical study, and teacher guidance that provide the foundation for the dream practice to produce its full effect. Lucid dreaming, extracted from this contemplative context and practiced as an isolated technique, may not produce the transformation that the traditions describe. The technique without the context is like a surgical instrument without the training, capable of great precision but dangerous in unskilled hands. The tradition's warnings about using lucid dreaming for entertainment rather than insight are not mere piety. They are practical advice based on centuries of observation that the technique, without the ethical and contemplative foundation, tends to produce attachment rather than liberation, distraction rather than insight, spiritual bypassing rather than genuine awakening. But the limitation is a limitation of practice, not of principle. The fact that most lucid dreamers do not achieve the clear light does not mean the clear light is not achievable. The fact that most lucid dreamers use the experience for recreation does not mean the experience cannot be used for transformation. The traditions provide the instructions. The neuroscience confirms that the instructions work, that the brain states the traditions describe are real, measurable, and inducible. And the quantum framework provides a theoretical foundation for the tradition's claims that the dream provides access to a deeper informational reality, that consciousness can operate independently of sensory input, and that the recognition of awareness as the ground of all experience is a genuine insight with genuine transformative potential. Now let us trace the connections to every investigation we have conducted. The observer effect is the quantum foundation of lucid dreaming. In the double-slit experiment, observation collapses superposition. In the lucid dream, observation collapses the dream's fluidity into stability. In both cases, the observer participates in the creation of the observed. In both cases, the introduction of awareness transforms an indefinite state into a definite one. And in both cases, the quality of the observation, the attention, the intention, the clarity determines the quality of the result. The heart investigation revealed that the heart processes information and broadcasts emotional state through its electromagnetic field. In the lucid dream, the heart continues to beat, the autonomic system continues to function, and the emotional content of the dream produces real cardiovascular responses, increased heart rate during dream fear, decreased heart rate during dream peace. The heart does not distinguish between dream emotions and waking emotions. The cardiac coherence or incoherence produced by dream content is physiologically identical to the coherence or incoherence produced by waking content. The dream is real to the heart. The placebo investigation demonstrated that information creates biology, that belief, expectation, and intention produce specific, measurable biological changes. The lucid dream is the purest placebo, a state in which the entire reality is generated by expectation and belief, and in which the biological effects are indistinguishable from those produced by real stimuli. Erlacher's motor learning research demonstrates this. The brain treats lucid dream practice as genuine experience because the neural circuits cannot distinguish between the two. If the placebo effect is the body responding to information, the lucid dream is the body responding to a complete informational reality that has no physical substrate. The free will investigation demonstrated that consciousness can select from quantum possibilities through process 1. The lucid dream is the arena in which process 1 operates. Most transparently, the dreamer consciously selects the direction of the dream, the template to attend to, the possibility to actualize. The selection is immediate, the result is visible, and the causal chain from intention to observation to actualization is unmediated by the physical constraints that complicate the exercise of free will in waking life. The lucid dream is free will in its purest form, unhindered by physical limitation, unmediated by sensory delay, directly responsive to the conscious intention of the observer. The fear investigation demonstrated that chronic fearful attention stabilizes the feared outcome through the Zeno effect. The lucid dream provides the most direct technology for breaking the fear loop, because in the lucid dream, the dreamer can confront the feared object directly, with full awareness, and transform it. Nightmare confrontation in lucid dreams, a therapeutic technique documented by Teda Stumbries, Daniel Erlacher, and other researchers, has been shown to reduce nightmare frequency and intensity in clinical populations. The dreamer who becomes lucid during a nightmare can face the threatening figure, ask it what it represents, transform it into something benign, or simply observe it with detached awareness until it dissolves. The fear is not suppressed. It is met directly, consciously, with the full power of the observer's awareness, and the meeting transforms the fear from a Zeno-stabilized loop into a dissolved pattern. The karma of the nightmare is changed in the nightmare itself. The subconscious investigation revealed that 95% of cognitive processing occurs below the threshold of awareness. The dream is the subconscious mind's primary expression, the nightly unfolding of unconscious content in imagistic form. And the lucid dream is the conscious mind's entry into the subconscious domain, the deliberate, aware exploration of the vast informational territory that normally operates in darkness. The lucid dreamer is an explorer of the unconscious, navigating the alaya vijnana, perceiving the sankharas, encountering the archetypal patterns that shape behavior and perception from below the threshold of awareness. The karma investigation demonstrated that intentional actions leave traces that shape future experience. The lucid dream is a karmic laboratory, a space in which intentions can be practiced, traced, and their consequences experienced in compressed time. The lucid dreamer who practices compassion in the dream is planting compassion seeds in the alaya vijnana. The dreamer who practices transformation is building the neural infrastructure of flexibility. The dreamer who practices confronting fear is dissolving the Zeno-stabilized patterns of chronic anxiety. Every intentional action in the lucid dream is a karmic action, depositing traces that carry over into waking life, shaping the neural pathways, the somatic markers, and the habitual patterns that determine the quality of waking experience. The synchronicity investigation revealed that meaningful coincidences operate through a causal, informational correlations, connections between inner states and outer events that are meaningful but not causally linked. The lucid dream may be the state in which these correlations are most accessible, because the lucid dream removes the sensory noise that normally drowns out the subtle informational signals from the implicate order. Experienced lucid dreamers report a heightened sense of synchronicity after periods of regular lucid dreaming practice, as though the practice of perceiving non-ordinary reality within the dream sensitizes the practitioner to non-ordinary connections within waking reality. The dream trains the pattern recognition. The dream cultivates the sensitivity to meaning, and the sensitivity, once developed in the dream, carries over into waking life, producing an increase in perceived synchronicity that the practitioner experiences as a deepening of their relationship with reality itself. The biological antenna investigation proposed that the body receives information from the quantum vacuum through the heart's electromagnetic field and the brain's microtubule network. During sleep, when external sensory input is blocked and the noise floor drops, the antenna's sensitivity to non-local signals may increase. The dream may be the antenna receiving non-local information in its most unfiltered form, the raw data from the implicate order, translated into the imagery and narrative that the brain's dream-generating machinery produces. The lucid dream adds awareness to this reception. The practitioner is not merely receiving the non-local information passively, but perceiving it consciously, evaluating it deliberately, and integrating it intentionally into their understanding of reality. The evolution investigation connected consciousness to the 4 billion-year trajectory of life on Earth. Dreams may be evolution's solution to a specific problem, the problem of integrating the vast amount of information that the waking mind processes during the day, consolidating memories, testing behavioral strategies in a safe simulation, and processing emotional experiences that the waking mind's defensive filters prevent from being fully metabolized. The dream is the brain's nightly maintenance cycle, the period during which the neural network is reorganized, pruned, strengthened, and optimized. And lucid dreaming may be the highest expression of this evolutionary function, the moment when the maintenance cycle becomes transparent to the consciousness that it serves, when the neural optimization is perceived by the awareness that benefits from it, and when the organism gains the capacity to participate actively in its own neural reorganization. The music investigation revealed that specific frequencies produce specific states of consciousness. The 4 0 Hertz gamma frequency that Voss identified as the signature of lucid dreaming is the same frequency that experienced meditators produce during deep practice, the frequency that Davidson documented in 10,000-hour Buddhist meditators, the frequency that is associated with conscious integration, meta-awareness, and the binding of information across brain regions. The lucid dream and deep meditation share the same frequency signature, suggesting that they access the same neural mechanism, produce the same quality of awareness, and may provide access to the same dimension of reality. The drum that drives the brain into theta for shamanic journeying, the chant that drives the brain into alpha for contemplative prayer, and the gamma frequency that drives the brain into lucidity during dreams are all instances of the same principle. Consciousness is frequency dependent. Change the frequency and you change the state. And the traditions, through millennia of practice, discovered the frequencies that produce the states they sought without oscilloscopes, without EEG machines, without transcranial stimulators. They discovered them through the empirical observation of what works. The OBE investigation demonstrated that consciousness can experience itself as located outside the body. The lucid dream provides a nightly demonstration of this principle, because in the dream, consciousness is not located in the body. The body is in the bed. Consciousness is in the dream. The dream body is a construction, a virtual avatar generated by the brain's model-building machinery, inhabited by consciousness but not identical to consciousness. The lucid dreamer who recognizes this, who sees the dream body as a construction, who experiences awareness as the ground rather than the contents, has the same insight that the OBE provides. Consciousness is not the body. Consciousness is the awareness that inhabits the body. And the inhabitation is flexible. It can inhabit a dream body, a waking body, or no body at all. The AI investigation clarified, by contrast, what cannot become lucid. An AI can simulate a dream. An AI can generate dreamlike imagery, dreamlike narratives, dreamlike sequences of events. But an AI cannot become lucid within its own simulation, because lucidity requires the capacity to recognize a construction as a construction, and this requires a meta-awareness, a witness, a consciousness that stands outside the construction while remaining inside it. AI does not have this. AI processes information but does not experience information. AI generates outputs but does not observe outputs from a perspective that transcends the generation. The lucid dream is proof that human consciousness possesses something that AI lacks: the capacity for self-reflective awareness, for metacognition, for the recognition of one's own constructions as constructions. This capacity is not computational, it is conscious, and it is the defining feature of the lucid dream, the thing that makes lucidity possible, the thing that transforms the dream from an immersive hallucination into an ontological laboratory. The information investigation demonstrated that reality is made of information rather than matter. The dream is the proof. Every night, your brain constructs a complete, convincing, emotionally real world from nothing but information. No atoms, no photons, no molecules, just patterns of neural activity information, organized by consciousness into a reality that is indistinguishable from the matter-based reality of waking life. The dream proves that information is sufficient for reality, and the lucid dream proves that consciousness can recognize the informational nature of reality while inhabiting it, that the code can become aware of itself as code, that the dreamer can see the dream as a dream without the dream ceasing to exist. The lucid dream is the information universe becoming self-aware. The distance and time investigations revealed that spatial and temporal boundaries may be informational constructions rather than fundamental features of reality. The dream confirms this. Nightly in the dream, you travel instantaneously from one location to another. You experience temporal compression and expansion. You access past events and future possibilities without the constraints that waking physics imposes. The dream operates in a reality where distance and time are fluid, where the informational structure of experience is not bound by the geometric constraints of space-time. If the waking world's space-time is a holographic projection from an informational surface, as the physics suggests, then the dream's spatial and temporal fluidity may be a direct perception of the informational ground from which space-time is projected. The dream does not violate the laws of physics. It perceives the reality beneath the laws of physics, the informational ground from which the laws emerge and to which the laws do not apply. The grief investigation explored the karmic bonds between people who love each other, bonds that persist in the implicate order, beyond physical separation and beyond death. Dreams of deceased loved ones are among the most commonly reported and most emotionally significant dream experiences. The traditions treat these dreams not as hallucinations produced by grief-stricken brains, but as genuine encounters, moments when the dreamer's consciousness, freed from the waking filter, accesses the informational dimension in which the deceased person's patterns persist. The Buddhist Bardo framework describes exactly this: the consciousness of the deceased existing in an informational state, capable of being perceived by the consciousness of the living when the living person's filter is relaxed during sleep. Whether this is true, whether dreams of the deceased represent genuine contact or simply the activation of memories by the grieving brain, cannot be determined by current science. But the tradition's interpretation is consistent with the information physics we have assembled. If information is conserved, if the patterns that constitute a person's consciousness persist in the quantum vacuum after death, and if the dreaming brain has access to non-local information through the mechanisms we have described, then the dream of the deceased may be what the traditions say. It is an encounter, a connection, a communication across the boundary that death creates between the embodied and the disembodied. Every thread connects. Every investigation points to the same insight. And the insight is not merely intellectual. It is practical. It is available. It is waiting for you tonight, in your own bed, in the privacy of your own mind, without any equipment, without any drugs, without any teacher, without any cost. The first step is the one that every tradition prescribes and that LaBerge's research confirms: reality testing during the day. Stop multiple times each day and ask, is this a dream? Examine your environment, look at your hands, read text, look away and read it again. Test the consistency of your experience, not as a philosophical exercise, as a genuine investigation, a sincere attempt to determine, through direct examination, whether you are currently waking or dreaming. The habit will carry into your dreams. And when it fires during a dream, when you ask, is this a dream? And notice that your hands have 6 fingers, or that the text on the sign keeps changing, lucidity will arrive. The second step is intention setting before sleep. As you lie in bed, as the hypnagogic imagery begins, hold the intention, I will know that I am dreaming. Repeat it. Visualize it. Imagine yourself inside a dream, noticing the dream signs, recognizing the dream, becoming lucid. This is LaBerge's mild technique. This is the Tibetan dream, yoga's daytime practice extended into the night. This is the sankalpa of yoga nidra. The specific words do not matter. The intention matters. The clarity matters. The sincerity matters. Plant the seed, water it with attention, and trust that the unconscious mind, the vast, powerful, 95% of your cognitive processing, unconscious mind will execute the intention when the dream arrives. The third step is the one that the traditions emphasize, and that Western lucid, dreaming culture tends to neglect. Use the experience for insight, not for entertainment. When you become lucid, and with practice, you will become lucid. Resist the temptation to fly, to fulfill fantasies, to use the dream as a playground. Instead, observe. Look at the dream with the curiosity of a scientist and the reverence of a contemplative. Notice that the entire world you are inhabiting is generated by your own consciousness. Notice that the textures, the colors, the faces, the emotions are all produced by the brain's model-building machinery without any external input. Notice that the dream is real, experientially, emotionally, neurologically real, and yet made entirely of information. And then ask the question that the traditions have been asking for millennia. If this world is made of information, is the waking world also made of information? If this world is constructed by consciousness, is the waking world also constructed by consciousness? If I can wake up inside this dream, can I wake up inside the other one? Tonight, you will dream. Your brain will construct a world complete, detailed, emotionally vivid, indistinguishable from waking reality. You will inhabit that world. You will walk through its streets, speak with its inhabitants, feel its textures, smell its air, and you will believe it. You will believe it as completely as you believe the waking world right now, because the brain that constructs the dream is the same brain that evaluates the dream, and the brain does not flag its own constructions as constructions. But there is a crack in the simulation, a flaw in the transparent model, a moment brief, fragile, easily missed when something in your awareness stirs, when a detail does not match. When a question arises from somewhere deeper than the dream itself, is this real? That question is the beginning, not just the beginning of a lucid dream, the beginning of a different relationship with reality, a relationship in which you are not merely the passive recipient of experience, but the active, aware, intentional participant in the construction of experience. A relationship in which you recognize first in the dream, then in waking life, and eventually in every state of consciousness that you are not the content, you are the awareness. You are not the dream, you are the dreamer. And the dreamer, the awareness, the witness, the consciousness that observes without being limited to any particular observation, is what the traditions call your deepest nature. Not your body, not your thoughts, not your emotions, not the content of any particular state, the awareness that pervades all states, the Turiya, the clear light, the witness, the one who was there before the dream began and who will be there after the dream ends. Tonight, when the dream arrives, ask the question, is this real? And see what happens when the dreamer wakes up inside the dream. Because the traditions say, and the physics may agree, that the answer you find there is the same answer that applies here, right now, in this moment, which may be the most vivid and most convincing dream you have ever had.